Hey guys, what's going on? Congratulations to myself for reaching 500 subscribers. So this is going to be the special. Figure we're pimp it out with the background to celebrate 500. What a milestone I've achieved in 4 years. It's a little over 100 subscribers a year. That's awesome. Soon I will be one of the trendsetters in this world. No, I know, it's just something fun to talk about. But today we're going to talk about the only thing that's happening still in the world as many states reopen. Many were in quarantine for a long time. And lots of them reopened. Lots of them are still closed. Even certain states, certain sections have opened, and certain other parts of the same state have not opened. Case in point, my country. Man, I can't talk today. I'm just so excited about reaching 500 subscribers. Some states, like Virginia, the vast majority of the state has opened into phase 1, which is very limited. Northern Virginia, which has the vast majority of the population, the vast majority of the COVID cases, has not opened. So we're seeing a kind of a strike, a sharp divide. Almost all of the states that have opened are Republican-led states, and almost all of the states that are still closed are Democrats. Now, we have seen, there are obviously some exceptions, but it's generally along those lines. So what we're going to talk about specifically, COVID. We talked about how, the first video I did is how they're lying about the data, they're inflating the numbers, they're making it much worse than what it actually is. And the second video I talked about the economic ramifications of this virus. And today, in this video, we're going to talk about the rights that they are trying to take away, have taken away and are trying to take away because of COVID. The reason why they are drumming up so much fear and inflating the numbers, inflating the stats, and twisting words in the media for months and months and months now, the reason why they are doing that is, one, because to go against President Trump, because President Trump's on the opposite side of the argument, sort of, because he's still supporting all of these shutdowns, he's letting the governors do what they want, so he's not really opposed, but regardless, they're taking the opposing side to go against Trump, because they go against Trump no matter what he does. If he was pro-lockdown, they would be arguing you're killing the economy, you're killing people's jobs, and Democrats would be clamoring to try to reopen everything just to go against him. But not only are they doing that to go against Trump, they're doing that because to justify taking away all of these rights that they are passing and all this emergency legislation, emergency bills that no one's reading and pass dozens and dozens passed a day. Each state is passing dozens and dozens, like they don't have time to read all of them. If they said how COVID actually is, and just were real about it, then the fear wouldn't be there. People wouldn't be so willing to just go along with all these rights being taken away from them, because they'd be like, hey, wait a second, it's actually not that bad. Like, it's kind of bad. And in New York and New Jersey, it's really, really bad, don't get me wrong. Like, I hate when people oversimplify my argument. Excuse me. Or my position, say, oh, you don't think it's a big deal at all. Well, no, actually, it's kind of a big deal. You can still overreact to a sort of big deal. I don't know why to explain this to adults, because so many things that I can describe of why are people reacting this way, why are they doing this, is because of falling IQ. Mostly. Oh, I get sidetracked so quick. There's just so many interrelated topics. The reason, because people are basically children. They react how children react. That's why they're so stupid, and they constantly misrepresent my argument and constantly oversimplify it or strawman me, and I spend all of this time not actually talking about argument, but addressing their sidesteps and their strawmans, is because they argue like children. If people were actually rational adults about this, they would look at it and just say, hey, it's not that big of a deal, so we should do some things, like, and they would address other policy ideas or certain other things people should do, but they wouldn't say, hey, we're just going to completely shut everything down and take away all your rights. And people often ask me, what rights are they taking away? First of all, most people don't even know what rights you have in the Constitution. If you ask a random person what are the first amendments in the Constitution, they would have no fucking clue. They might know like the first one, because it's freedom of speech, and they might know the second one, and that's about it. That's all they know. So how can you know if your rights are being taken away if you don't even know what your rights are? They're just like, it doesn't really affect me because I'm staying at home, getting paid to stay at home, so my rights aren't being taken away. Well, your rights aren't that. They're other things. We're going to go into it. Let's pull up this article, shall we? Will COVID-19 kill the Constitution? Politicians and the public are blah 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 blah. Are alarmingly willing to violate civil liberties in the name of fighting the epidemic. Why can I not talk? Blah, 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 blah. So this goes into, at the core of it, there are certain rights that I can see why the politicians are going after. Namely, freedom of assembly and freedom of religion. Because when people assemble, they spread the virus more. Now, I still don't believe that the government should have the right to say you can't go to these places or you can't freely convene with other people who are willingly going out to their homes to do something. I still don't think it's the case, but it makes more sense than, one, banning gun sales. What do gun sales have to do with COVID-19? I have asked so many people that so many different times and no one can give me an answer about that. This is just one example. I'm giving one example. But this is happening in counties and states across the country, so I don't want people to cherry pick and say, well, you just picked one thing, so it's not a big deal because you just picked out one county. No, it's just an example to show you. After California Governor Gavin Newsom ordered non-essential businesses to close in response to the COVID-19 epidemic, he let local sheriffs decide whether that category included gun dealers. Newsom's decision, which allowed the Los Angeles County Sheriff to ban the sale of firearms and ammunition, illustrates how readily politicians ignore constitutional rights in the very circumstances where they matter most. Villanueva's ban, which several gun rights groups challenged in a federal lawsuit last Friday, was inconsistent with recent guidance from the Department of Homeland Security as well as the Second Amendment. In an advisory published on Saturday, the department added firearm retailers to its definition of the essential critical infrastructure, which Newsom explicitly exempted from his order. Now this Villanueva, which is the sheriff, he describes himself as a supporter of the Second Amendment, but somehow says that keeping guns for self-defense is irresponsible. I don't know how you can support the Second Amendment and say that keeping guns at home for self-defense is irresponsible, but that's beside the point. So in a nutshell, if I had to shorten this in a nutshell, because I know we've been going a long time already, haven't really got through much. In response to the COVID, all these politicians are banning all these different things that have nothing to do with COVID. How does banning firearm sales stop the spread of COVID? Now you may say, oh, well, it stops all the people from going to the gun shows and in the gun shops to stop spread COVID. Okay, well, one, it's in the Constitution. You have the access to firearms. You can't just... So that should definitely have been in the essential businesses list. But he explicitly didn't do that. And across the country, they are doing that. You can still respect the social distancing guidelines of 6 feet or no more than 10 people and still sell guns. There's no reason why unilaterally you just, nope, can't do it. I can see why, again, when banning freedom of assembly or banning people from going to church, which violates the freedom of religion, you're saying there are too many people gathered in one spot, so you're going to spread the virus. That makes more sense. I still don't agree with it, but it makes more sense if you're trying to stop the spread of the virus. But what does banning the sale of firearms, especially online, what does that got to do with anything? Another example. They're banning lots of free speech. Free speech has been constantly under attack in this country for decades, but they ramped it up with COVID, with websites like YouTube saying, because of COVID, we're going to delete videos they're not breaking our terms of service. They're doing nothing wrong whatsoever, but because of COVID, we're going to delete them anyway. It's just like, what are you talking about? What do the two have to do with each other? They're using it as an excuse to violate all these different rights. Again, how does stopping people freedom of speech stop the spread of the virus when they're online, in their own home, not going anywhere, saying something? And then you say, oh, that's just YouTube. That's not like your freedom of speech is not YouTube. It's every single site is doing this. All of the major platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of them are doing this simultaneously at the exact same time. And it's just like, what does that have to do with anything? They have nothing to do with each other. They're just using an excuse, and people are so fearful and they're going through so much crap right now trying to deal with the fallout of the policies of this virus that they're just like, hey, why am I being censored on like every single thing? Every single site I'm on, I'm getting censored. Most people, their immediate concern is, can can't pay my mortgage because I can't work because the government is being tyrannical fascist, but that's beside the point. And they're doing this across the board. They're coming dangerously close to breaking the Third Amendment, which hasn't been relevant for quite some time. It forbade the British to put soldiers in people's homes, or just in general, the government cannot station soldiers in your home. But when you have all these people clamoring for the government to be able to send troops into people's home to break quarantine in your own house, that comes dangerously close to violating the principle of the amendment. Yeah, I know it's not exactly the same, but that, like, what has a society, as a country, what are we doing? What are we going to? And the fact that you think it's okay if the neighbor has a big family and there's more than 10 people, or a neighbor has some of their family members over, so they're all family members, so they're all willingly doing this just to hang out, or whatever. Like, there's so many different situations. Like, whatever example you can think of, it doesn't have to be a specific example. To snitch on your neighbor and say, hey, they have more than 10 people in the house, and then, like, a SWAT raid breaks into your house and they break up quarantine, and, like, we're all the same family, we're just hanging out. Like, I don't think Democrats know, like, how big families get. Like, it's some people have way more than 10 members, but and it just goes on and on and on through all of the amendments. So, to wrap, freedom of speech online, everywhere being censored, even though they admit you're not breaking their rules, just because of COVID, we're going to do it anyway. That gives them a blind light. A green light, actually, not a blind light. A green light, just to mass censor everything that they don't agree with. Which is everything not radical liberal. Because every single one of those sites is run by a Silicon Valley radical liberal. So when an excuse is like, wow, I can use COVID as an excuse. Like, this is my green light just to get rid of all content on my platform that I don't agree with. And now the supporters of that will say, oh, it's to stop the spread of misinformation of COVID, because they claim all these doctors that are not in support of all these lockdowns, they're saying they're spreading misinformation, which some of them are. Yeah, I will agree with you. But there are also other people who are simply just saying the other side of the argument, and you think that's misinformation. For someone to say, hey, this study that was done in California by the University of, I think it was Berkeley? I forget. Some university in California did this study showing that the death rate was 0.02%. Another one did it, said it was 0.2%. Regardless, it's really, really, really low. Astronomically lower than what the government previously said whenever they're trying to scare people and give away all their rights. For the pro-lockdown people, they could say, that's fake news, that's fake COVID information, YouTube, take it down. Meanwhile, we have all of these quarantine Karens wailing hysterically, saying that the death rate is 20, 30, 40%, but it is nowhere fucking close to that, and they're not censored. Saying we are stopping the spread of misinformation, that is entirely subjective. There are so many times I just post, like, a study. I don't say anything about it, I don't put my interpretation about it, anything. I just post it, and people get enraged about it, saying it's hate speech and inflammatory, and I should be censored for it. That's a green light. It says everything you don't like is misinformation. Everything I don't like is trying to kill people and is misinformation, therefore we should ban it. They're doing that with the freedom of speech. They're doing that with freedom of religion by not allowing people to go to the place of worship. In what other circumstances not letting someone go to the place they worship? How is that not violating their right to practice their religion? In any other circumstances, if you, like, physically stopped a Muslim from going to a mosque and praying, you would be harassed, harangued, and obliterated off the face of the universe for oppressing that Muslim and not allowing him to practice his religion. But suddenly you say, oh, it's because of COVID. Then suddenly it's okay. And you just do that to everyone. Over a virus that has anywhere, I've seen some reports from, it has a mortality rate of 0.02% or like 2%. Because of this tiny, tiny little insignificant fucking thing, you get to do something that in any other circumstance would be totally not allowed. You get to send people you get soldiers to send in people's homes, breaking the spirit of the Third Amendment. There's no trial for any of these people. They don't have public and speedy trial. They're not judged by a jury, which is the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. Like, there is nothing. You are throwing everything out. There's no jury or trial, for example, is like, your business is now closed. You cannot open, you cannot have customers, you cannot make a living. Well, when did the jury accept that? Where is a trial? You just said it and boom. Now you're punishing me and I did nothing wrong, and now I'm having trouble feeding my kids and paying my mortgage, and I've done nothing wrong, and there's been no trial. I have no way to defend myself. I just accept it. They just throw out the entire Constitution, point by point by point by point. So that is the summary of my video. I'll post a link to the links that I talked about, even ones I didn't talk about, because I only talked about one of them, but they illustrate the point of what I was saying, that all of these rights that have nothing to do with stopping COVID, the politicians just leaped at the second they got wind that, hey, we can do these lockdowns and we can restrict all this stuff, in breaking every single damn one of them. You point out an amendment, and I can point to you an example of they're trying to break it, or they're breaking the spirit of it, or they have in fact broken it. Like, they didn't break the Third Amendment, but they got really dangerously close to it. And if they got their way with soldiers on the street breaking into people's homes, that's basically why they made the Third Amendment. They didn't want that. The fact that no one I've ever talked to, no news article justifying any of these breaking the amendments, no governor, no Democratic governor, no one on the face of the planet has been able to say to anyone, not even just to me, I can't even see them saying to someone else, why any of these breaking of these rights have to do with stopping COVID. They just do it and say, because COVID. That, you can't just say because reasons and break the Constitution. This is the same thing that happened after 9/11. After 9/11, this terrible thing happened, and they're like, hey, we need to break rights A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because terrorists, because Muslims, because 9/11. And people were just so frightened, they just went along with it. And that's why we came up with the NSA breaking into people's emails and phones and texts and everything for years and years and years, and if it wasn't for Edward Snowden, we wouldn't even know about that. And people just accept it. Oh yeah, the government can just spy on me anytime. What about your right to privacy? Oh, the government can just shut down my business wherever I want because of some scary virus thing. What about your right to your own property? Like, it doesn't matter what is happening. You can't break people's rights. Like, I don't understand why people think, oh, because something bad happened, then we can just throw out the Constitution. No, the Constitution exists for a reason, and you can never, ever break it. Otherwise, you are oppressing people. People are like, oh, it's not oppression, it's just inconveniencing people. Oh, I'm sorry. Making so you have to choose between food and medicine and being able to pay rent so you're not homeless, that's just an inconvenience. All these people that are saying it's just an inconvenience, lo and behold, all of them have guaranteed jobs and they're paid to work at home or paid to do nothing. What a surprise! I'm sure it's just a coincidence. I'm sure it's just one big fat coincidence. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're not in the situation of, I'm about to lose my home, I can't feed my kids. I don't know anyone, I would welcome to talk to someone or just leave a comment, someone who is about to lose their home or about to not be able to feed their kids and say, oh yeah, I think we should stay quarantined. I just can't find a single one of them. What a surprise. So then they say, it's not breaking a right, it's an inconvenience. Inconveniencing people is breaking their rights. For an example, it's inconvenience for black people to sit on the back of the bus. It's still oppressive for them to make black people sit at the back of the bus and whites can sit in the front. It's oppressive to have separate drinking fountains for whites and colored. Yeah, on the grand scheme of things, it's just an inconvenience. You just go to a different water fountain. But that still doesn't mean that it's morally okay to do so. It's wrong. Just like it was wrong to inconvenience the black people because of those two examples I just mentioned, it's morally wrong to do these things to people. And arguably, what the government is doing to all these people about to lose their homes and can't feed themselves is way, way worse than just not being able to sit where you want to on the bus or going to different drinking fountain. Like, it's way worse than that.